Tantalum is the most essential metal for the electronics industry currently. In the mid-1980s, tantalum revolutionized handheld electronics in that, if you remember the first run of mobile phones, affectionately known as the brick, those would have been made with aluminum and or ceramic capacitors. And capacitors are an essential part of any electronic item, any electronic circuitry. And in the mid-1980s, they realized that tantalum had the unrivaled highest capacitance out of any known substance. So whereas gold has the greatest conductivity, you know, in some very high-end electronics you'll have gold wire.
Yeah.
Well, tantalum has the highest capacitance, which is defined as the ability to hold and release instantaneously the most electric charge per gram. So the capacitors that would have been in those early phones, those bricks, would have been about the size of your baby fingernail. But the tantalum capacitors that would be now in your BlackBerry or your Motorola Razr, they're about the size of a head of a pin. And there is no substitute for the capacitance of tantalum. So tantalum also has the widest operant range. It has the second highest melting point, second to only tungsten. So it's always been the darling of electronics in aerospace and the automotive industry. But now as well, with the drive towards miniaturization, which of course has been on for decades, tantalum is also key in the production of things like your average cell phone, or an iPod, or a digital camera, or your flat screen television, or your laptop computer. So essentially, tantalum is found in all electronics, whether it's firing your car's airbag, whether it's in the electronics in a jet, whether it's in the electronics in your cell phone. The current global demand for tantalum at this time is about 6 million pounds for the Western world. The current supply for tantalum at this point in time appears to be stable, but it comes from principally one mine in Australia called Wodgina. There is a small operation also in Canada, which is run by the Cabot Corporation, and that's in Manitoba, and it's called Tanco. The current demand for tantalum right now comes principally from the electronics industry, where about 75 to 85% of all tantalum goes. The current demand is very high right now, and there is upward pressure on price. That is on the spot market, though. Although in the Western world, all tantalum is contracted in long-term contracts. And because of that, it is very important that Commerce's project is in Canada. We will be looking at going into production in 2010. We started the environmental baseline data collection in the summer of 2006 to see if we could speed up the regulatory process, although we don't trigger the regulatory process until we've completed our feasibility study, which is in most likely 5 or 6 months. Currently, with our focus deposit, which is called the Upper Fur Carbonatite, we could supply 10% of the current Western world's demand for tantalum for the next 28 years. Although we just had a news release out on the conclusions from last year's drilling, and we have not yet upgraded the resource calculation, which should come in several weeks. The potential profitability of Commerce Resources would be essentially to take to market both our tantalum and our byproduct niobium. Niobium has seen a 400% increase in price in the last year, and we have about 6 times as much niobium to our tantalum. So ideally, on a production or an extraction of 2 million tons per year, we would be looking to take to market about 500,000 pounds of tantalum. At about $60 a pound, that would be around $30 million. The amount of niobium we would produce, though, would be about 6 million pounds of niobium. And the current value of niobium for that kind of product, niobium oxide, would be around $25. We're financed well through production right now. We're financed through 2010, and we're going to have the most exciting and busy summer we've ever had. The program for this year is to be the busiest we've ever had for Commerce Resources. At this point in time, we're waiting for the GEMCOM, which is a computer model of the Upper Fur resource, and that will also be accompanied by an increase in the resource's tonnage. Following that, we will be looking at doing several condemnation holes, as they're called, in the area where we plan to put our tailings pit and also our processing facility. This will be in anticipation of setting up a pilot plant and doing a bulk sample for the Upper Fur deposit this year. While those are both going on, or those programs are going on, we're continuing with the environmental baseline data collection in anticipation of entering the permitting process, at the same time as we have hydrometallurgical and metallurgical processes ongoing at SGS Lakefield. That is for the program in BC, which will be the busiest year for British Columbia. Additionally, we have our new deposit in Quebec, northern Quebec, called the Eldor, and we will be starting to drill that in approximately a month from now. We've already flown in some gas and diesel for the camp and the drill rig, and we'll be looking to break ground by early April.